I don't think we'll see the attendee list go up like we did last time. All right.
So far, it's just us.
All right. Well, I'm going to read this anyway. So this special meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the governor's executive order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. In compliance with this act, the district will conduct this Board of Education special meeting as a teleconference. Phone number and meeting ID for the meeting is 669900-9128. Meeting ID 883-3903-1739. Passcode 180536, or on a computer, www.TUSD.org. Under board meetings is our link. Board meetings comments can be submitted prior to 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. Mrs. Liu, I think I'll skip this because Mr. Mara has informed me that there are no public comments at this time.
That's fine.
And so, and we have no requests for folks who need accommodation because of a disability. So now I will turn it back to you for adoption of the agenda.
Great. Hear ye, I am calling the meeting to order. And can we have a motion to adopt the agenda for today, please?
I move that we adopt today's agenda.
Second.
All in favor, you can raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
can't see James. Okay. All right. Motion passes unanimously. And Superintendent So.
All right, thank you. Board members, I so appreciate your time and willingness to come together today to talk about communications and look at how we are doing. Gil has shared the screen. So really, you know, as I've mentioned, you know, that these workshops, or some districts call them study sessions, are really allowing the opportunity for the board to discuss matters that are important to the board and the district in a little bit more of an unstructured way, allowing you to have conversation and input with no action on the current state of the district with regard to whatever category that we're talking about, and also to help set some strategic direction for the future. And so as we talk about today, our strategic communications initiative, we will provide you with an update as to what's been accomplished since almost exactly a year ago today. The board adopted the strategic communications plan. Bonnie and Laura were down here presenting to you. And we also want to seek your input and guidance in establishing a tough decisions protocol, which is something that we talked about, as well as looking at on the horizon for where we want this district to be in the communications space. So Bonnie's going to go through, Bonnie and Laura will go through some brief slides on where we're at, and then we'll get into allowing you to have some opportunity to discuss. Bonnie?
Great. Good afternoon, Madam Board President and members of the board. It's great to be back. I'm Bonnie Moss with Clifford Moss, and with me today is Laura Crotty. She'll be speaking in a moment. We're really happy to be here. And just a comment, since Dr. Stowe did such a great job giving you an overview of where we're headed today, we do want to say that we're gonna do a lot of different things in a compressed period of time today. So we're going to give you a little bit of context and some reminders. We're going to ask you to walk with us through, actually run with us through a brisk check-in on several of the key activities we've been involved with over the last many months. We're going to spend most of our time engaging you on a what we're calling a tough decisions protocol, and also to get your preliminary views on what vision you have for the district in the communication space, and then we'll wrap up. But you may hear us at one point or another keep us moving in one area because we know we've got more conversation, deeper conversation in another area. Okay, Laura.
Great. Good afternoon, members of the board, Madam President, and anybody from the public that is joining as well. I'm happy to be here, Laura Crotty with Clifford Moss, and nice to see everybody again this afternoon. As you know, increasingly information is more in demand and more accessible, lending itself to an environment of ongoing communications excellence where listening is key to success. So the next few slides will briefly review the Strategic Communications Initiative you all are familiar with. So after significant assessment and planning in the spring and summer of 2019, the board unanimously received the plan in February of last year, as Dr. Stowe mentioned, and then COVID hit. Since then, the district has continued to implement communications excellence, even in light of COVID. And now here we are in February of 2021, looking at our accomplishments, but also looking at what can we do and visioning for the future. So as part of the initial planning and assessment and listening, what we found from all the stakeholder listening is really 5 key themes. The Torrance Unified School District community does a great job on its putting students first. Generally, communications is mostly positive. Externally, the community wants more, and opinions are abundant about tough decisions. And I'll leave that for later today because that's really the majority of what we're talking about. So what actually was put into the plan? Well, lots of listening, ongoing listening, as well as using the data from our listening to provide the 3 core strategies. So you can see that we ended up going through 3 core strategies for the main plan, and we'll go through each of those. So the first was a communications reset, a new mindset for everybody to be in a learning organization mode to continue to improve communications. The second is capacity building, investing in training, investing in our people, supporting, making sure that we're realigning around the plan, and we have some good news to share there as well today. And then finally, core strategy number 3, and that is begin the journey to communications excellence. So that has begun, but we know that we are always on a path of continuous improvement, and the goal of creating a lasting culture of communications excellence and building a culture of communicators is an ongoing goal. So that is our core strategy number 3. And then finally, on the next slide are just a few examples of some of the great implementations that we've seen over the past several months. Really, we've seen an adoption of communications pillars that we had going through all of the different schools with input and listening. We've had ongoing meetings with an advisory arm to the Strategic Communications Initiative with the Blue Ribbon Advisory Panel. You can see some of the other pieces that we've done, but really in all areas of the district, we've seen improvement. And I'm going to pass it on to Bonnie to sort of talk about those and get your quick opinion.
Okay, so what we decided to do, given that we have so much to engage all of you on the board about, was to take several of the key activities, the most significant activities that we took on as part of the Strategic Communications Initiative over the past many months, and just put those in front of you, and as a quick indicator, a quick signal of where you stand. We're going to conduct essentially a straw poll among the board members. And I'm told that Dr. Stowe provided everyone with some tools to help you in the voting process. I'm understanding that everyone has a green sheet, a red sheet, and a yellow sheet. Does one of you want to hold that up so I can see your sheets of paper? Oh, there we go. There's
Arts and crafts, as Mrs. Liu alluded to them as.
perfect. Okay. Well, what we're eager to see is as we go through 7 of these, your vote on each one. And green means you want to see it continue and expand. Red means you believe we should drop it and use our resources and our energy in another way. And yellow means that you think there's some significant calibration that is needed. Are there any questions before we start from the board? Okay, not hearing any, so let's jump in.
And if you need any clarification or anything, we feel free to ask. We just wanted to kind of quickly get through this and take a temperature reading for where everyone is at.
That's great. And Dr. Stowe, please jump in and share with me if you see something that I'm not seeing. So our first core area that we're going to ask you to vote on is the listening work. You know, we heard from lots of different stakeholders that we needed to do a better job of listening, and that is a key part of the two-way communications process, not just putting information out, but doing a lot better at listening. And so that's been a theme throughout the last many months. And so we'd like to ask you to cast your votes. And do you want to see that continue and expand, drop, or calibrate? So just if you can all show, if the board members can just show your colors on this first engagement area. Okay, I'm seeing colors, and maybe Dr. Stowe, you can tell us what you're seeing too, because I'm lots of green, some green with some calibration. There's a really creative approach.
Yes.
Green and yellow, green and yellow. Okay. And we're taking notes as we go.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Here we come to the next major area that we invested in, which was the Blue Ribbon Advisory Panel. Just a refresher there, that was a group of folks deliberately selected who represent the diversity of the district. And we really looked at them as a sounding board. And we asked them to come together, I would say quarterly. We've met at least 4 or 5 times. And amazingly, this group has been quite earnest. Whenever we ask their opinions, they weigh in with candor. And so the question there is, and I believe we had board member Hahn as our past board member representative to that group. And I believe we now are going to have board member
Dr. Gersten and Ms. Park.
Dr. Gersten and Ms. Park, so 2 board members now. So again, let's take a vote, straw vote, continue and expand, calibrate, or drop. Okay, we're seeing, okay, and we are taking notes on all the colors that you're putting up in front of us, so that's really good. This is obviously just a quick touch base because there will be obviously a lot more follow-up that the superintendent and his team will do as we move forward. Okay, next we want to talk about the communication pillars. This, quite frankly, emerged out of the COVID-19 pandemic hitting literally overnight. And what we saw was, as the district was rigorously adapting to a distance learning model, we thought it would be a good opportunity to put in place a clear set of guidelines that would convey that we still care about communications. And so that's how the 6 pillars came together. In fact, over time, they have been refined. Stakeholders have weighed in. We're looking at ways to broaden the use of these pillars. We have descriptors on the 1-pager. So here we are, and let's cast your votes on, should we continue and expand the use of these pillars? Should we drop, or should we calibrate? Okay, seeing some different, lots of calibration options here. Good. Okay, we will circle back on that. Very good, very good. Okay, next item is the State of Our Schools annual report. This was a first for the district, went out in the fall to 55,000 households with obviously the major portion going to English-speaking households, but also a segment going to Spanish-speaking households. It talked about a variety of things that are happening in the district. We got a lot of feedback on it once it had landed. So again, now's the time to cast your vote. Should we continue? Should we drop? Should we calibrate? Okay, very good, very good, very good. Good feedback there. Thanks, everybody. All right, moving to the next one. And Dr. Stowe, I'd like to have you comment here because you've been deeply invested in this one. TUSD capacity building. By this, we mean a huge investment has gone into training your leaders. Here you have a major initiative for the district. We can't expect folks to adapt to becoming a culture of communicators without investing in training and development of many, many types. We have completed training for leadership, field leaders. We've now done a 2.0 training for leaders, a compressed version. We've done customer service training for frontline office staff. And the district is also now investing in building a professional learning program for classified staff. So a lot of activity here. Dr. Stowe, anything to add from your end before we ask for the vote?
You know, just in the board members, you know, about what we're doing and what we've done. I believe that it's paid off, and more than anything, it's the people feeling part of the process through the training and appreciative of being asked whether, you know, asked not just to come to training, but about topics that they're interested in. And so we're really working to customize for the folks out there that are doing the work. What is it they need to be better at their job? What is it that they need to feel more confident in their work, in whether they interact with the public or students or however they're doing their work? And so, you know, this has it's ongoing. It is really part of the we are leading the learning, and we're all learners in this process.
Excellent. Okay, time to cast your votes. Okay, very good. Some good feedback there. Great. Okay, I love this creativity in the crowd. We see multiple colors going on here. Thank you very much. Okay. Next, we're going to move to the Good Neighbor program. And again, Dr. Stowe, I'd like you to comment, but the strategic value of this initiative, this piece, is that you've got 30 schools scattered throughout the district. They each serve their own unique communities, and the district serves the community as a whole. So you are engaging in both the strategically consistent message outbound and the relationship building, and you're also allowing for operational flexibility. We're on the early end of implementing this program, but when it's fully implemented, you will see 30 different Good Neighbor programs happening at the school site level. They each may look a little different from school to school, but across the district, strategically, there will be Good Neighbor programs at every site. And I know, Dr. Stowe, you were one of the inspirations for this. You have a long history doing Good Neighbor activities. Thoughts on this one?
Well, when I heard Bonnie talk about the you know, the flexibility at the school sites, I think about my mom who told me, I don't care where you go to college, but you're going to college. And so that's kind of with this is we don't really care what they do or how they go about it, but they're doing it. And so there are elements of it that, you know, really one element that's going to be consistent, and that is the Good Neighbor letter that is going out at the end of next week or early the following week, kind of aligned with the reopening for 3-5. And then that's elementary, and then the middle and high school one will be a week or so after that. But really, it's about getting schools to embrace their communities, to make sure that we're you know, we have a vast reach here in TUSD, and the schools are part of the community, and we know that people grew up here, they went to schools here, and so many of them live here, you know, for their entire lives. And so it's about sharing the great work that we are doing with and for our students, and being that community partner with the residents in and around the schools.
Excellent. Okay, time to vote. Board members, vote with your colors. Seeing a lot of green up on that screen. Lots of green. Okay, great. Thanks very much. And then we're landing on the real process that we saw over the past many months, where there was growth in the way we communicated, growth in the use of more channels, growth in further reach with our messages. And so we really saw that, not just the website, but there has been more activity in social media. Still have a ways to go, but more activity there. Lots more Zoom, more texting, more emails and e-blasts, more experiential connections with folks. So the idea here is we have been growing in the various channels we use to communicate. And turning now to all of you, would your vote be to continue and expand, to drop, or to calibrate? Time to cast your vote. Okay, seeing some calibrate, let's keep going, let's go, and let's calibrate. That's what I'm seeing. Let's keep going and let's calibrate. Excellent. Good. And then lastly, before we leave this kind of look on the past, we wanted to give you, the board, any opportunity, if there was an area that we put attention on over the past many months that you didn't see represented here, this would be your opportunity to say, well, we did X, Y, or Z as part of the initiative, and I think we should also vote on that. This is not a statement about your vision of where we need to go, but really a look back on the past. Did we miss anything significant? Is there any board member who?
I was curious about the training workshops that we've provided for parents, and where that would fall in. I know that we've also scheduled more distance learning workshops for parents. Would that fall under, I actually don't know. Would it be capacity building? Would it?
I think my view, and then Dr. Stowe, you may have a view on this. I think that the opportunity for training parents is really in the vision category, because that's.
No, I think what she's referring to is all of the training and outreach we've done for parents on reopening the distance learning platform, like all of that stuff. Parent education really is where it falls. And I don't know that it falls in any of these, quite honestly. But it certainly could be its own category.
The only reason I built it up is I brought it up is because I think that if there is messaging that we want to convey through these other channels, instead of creating more channels, if we already have sort of a captive audience in these parent workshops or parent education meetings, that is a venue for us to be able to communicate other information in addition to how to figure out Zoom or help their kids learn. Oh, yes, go ahead.
There's a lot of wisdom in that.
Could I maybe add that it's part of our two-way communication, especially when we have the Q&A. So it's I forget which slide it was on, Bonnie, but I think that was one of the it could fall potentially somewhat in there, where we have opportunities for parents to be able to actually ask questions and get responses right away.
Yes, I think that makes sense. And I would say that there's probably a lot more that can be cultivated there, even though you've been doing a lot of communications, and then maybe, as we say, leveraging that is part of a new level of capacity building that can happen, so that parent group can also be part of the army of communicators, the culture of communicators. Excellent. Others who might have something to that we've looked at that has already been existing? Okay, I'm going to keep us moving because we have lots to talk about. So we're going to pivot now to tough decisions. And Tim, it's your show.
Sure. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we heard from the early listening, and then look at some examples, and then talk about what's worked. You know, as we reflect back on the past, what worked, what didn't, and what are some of the things that we can include. So, Jill, if you want to go to the next slide, Bonnie, you want to talk about what you heard, because you did most of the compilation of all of the listening last. Well,
Yes.
in the spring of 2019. So really, it's a while ago that much of this has occurred prior to development of the plan.
Yeah, we wanted to put this back, this set of major findings on listening and what we heard, mainly because it was a strong sense of opinion when we started back in the spring of 2019. And what was really interesting was that across the board among all of our stakeholders, what the district got was pretty strong marks at the core mission and on general communications. But when it came to tough decisions, what we heard a lot was that the district was not as good at listening as it needed to be. And that when tough decisions have to be made, we needed a model that was more two-way. We needed a model that allowed for people to be involved and engaged and heard before decisions were made that impact them. So this was back in June of 2019. There's been a lot of work happening over the past many months, but the unfinished business for us is developing a better way, a better system where we can work together to make tough decisions in a way that allows people to feel heard before decisions are made.
So when we think about putting in place a protocol for tough decisions, whether it's district-wide or at the site level, I think we need to think about more than just a list of boxes to check. It can certainly include steps in a process, but I think as we discuss here shortly, that we want to think about this protocol in terms of the behaviors and values that we're all about, right? So what are our guiding principles behind the decisions? What's our why? So I think that can be part of this, and interested in getting your feedback as to what that is, so that we can build this protocol, because it really is holistic and multidimensional. And when done right with fidelity and developed and implemented, I think it could really have a lasting positive impact on decisions that are made, and not so much the decision, but how people feel about the decision, because things are going to come, right? And you've all been in the line of fire with so many different things in the past 12 months. And we've been able to learn a lot, I'm sure. We've also talked with our leadership team about this tough decision protocol through trainings, and really want to use this opportunity with all of you to then allow sites to replicate pieces of this at their level, so that they can involve their stakeholder groups in how they go about making decisions. So kind of just in thinking about the last 12 months, what is it that worked? What didn't? What did we learn? At this point, I'd love to have the five of you be able to just kind of have a conversation and share with us. We'll all take notes, and hear from you as the ones who had to make those decisions. What is your feedback for input and input as we develop this protocol that we will ultimately bring back to you in a few months?
And maybe I'll stop screen sharing, Tim, so we can all.
Yeah,
see
that'd be great.
together. There we go.
So what worked? Let's start with what worked, maybe. You know, what were some of those things that as board members you felt as a district we did well? When you think about the gosh, I mean, I was just reflecting this morning about in a conversation with some others about what we went through in November and December, because there are a lot of other districts that are going through that now, just that reopening piece. And so kind of sharing with them our processes. But again, you were all in the middle of it. And so interested to hear what worked.
One of
So
the
one of the
things,
things I, go
sorry,
ahead. No,
No,
you,
Madam President, you first.
and, okay, one of the things that we did was listening to the public, obviously, about where or not they want the schools to open up again. For example, the first grade back in beginning of January. That was, I believe that was tough. And what worked is that we showed them we are listening, we are taking notes of what they're doing, and there have been a lot of replies going back to them. So I think that works really well, including our public information officer also sending stuff back. So they get they write one email out, they get quite a few replies. That shows that we're listening. But at the same time, I think we can do more listening and be out there more. If I want us to go to more events and just be able to that people see our presence there and we can talk. Of course, we can't yet, but something of that matter where we show that we're listening from not just from emails, but from all different angles.
Good.
I was going to say a couple of things. The first thing is that I was going to say the first thing that Betty exactly said, which is listening, but I was going to put it in terms of we have been, I think, very empathetic. At the time that a lot of the listening was happening, there was people in the board position who had at least given the impression of having ideas that they wanted to advance forward, regardless of how the community felt. And I think that each of us, even though we have our internal beliefs, I think each of us have taken the time to listen, have taken the time to be empathetic, and have reserved judgment until we had to make that decision. And I think that, you know, and I'm proud of all of us to be able to do that. You know, to act as representatives of the people and not representatives of our own self-interest. The other thing that the district has done that that I think has gone beyond anything ever done before is what was alluded to by Ms. Park earlier, that there have been community Q&As. The thing is that no matter how you try to get the information out via email, via text, you know, there's just so much bombardment on everybody. Everyone's trying to grab every little moment of attention that every human being has. And so, you know, that just from so many different directions that you can hold 3 Q&As, you can do a public meeting, you can send out emails, and yet the district was still finding people that hadn't heard the message yet. And that every communication had people that were hearing it for the first time. And there were also people there who were hearing it for a second or third time, trying to grab onto something new, which of course produces a whole new challenge. But those are the 2 big things, if I had to pick 2, which is a more empathetic, responsive board, and the district's attempt to outreach in so many different ways. And I you know, I told Dr. Stowe how appreciative I was, especially for those parent Q&As, because I thought that was a whole new dimension that Torrance Unified had never done before.
Don't forget the 3.5-hour teacher Q&A that it was supposed to be an hour and a half and it went till what, 7:38 at night. So
shows how important it was.
right, absolutely.
Thank you for doing that.
Other board members?
What thoughts?
I think, you know, so obviously my experience is a little bit short in terms of, just a couple of months. But I think in the couple of months, I just found that the board and staff is really focused on trying to find a solution to move forward in times like these. And I think it's a really big strength for us, that we're focused on how do we solve a problem, how do we move forward, what are the best ways to do that, and to try to look at all the different angles. Perhaps we can look at more angles. There's always opportunities there, but just the mindset, the focus in how we move forward and being solutions oriented, trying to be a problem solver. I think that makes things a lot easier and smoother, not only for staff, but even for the board as we're navigating through this process.
Great. Others?
I think for me, two things come up to my mind. Number one is I think Tim has been a lot more proactive in reaching out to the community. But I think I wouldn't know because we've never been in a pandemic. I don't know how other superintendents would have acted, but he has really stepped up the game to communicate to the public. So I think that's been huge. I think that people need to hear from him. And I think that he has given them a level of a sense of assurance and peace and calm, knowing that things are okay. And at the same time communicating the plans that we're trying to do. One of the big things I thought we did well was that we were very proactive about communicating to the community about things that we're going to implement. So one of the big things I remember of all this is in August when Katie, you sent out that brochure about blended and distance learning. That was a huge thing, right? Because LAUSD never did that. A lot of districts never asked the parents, which one are you going to choose before the school year began? And then right in the middle of the school year, they're like, jumping through hoops trying to send that up. But we were very, very forward thinking and expressing to people. So kind of give them a future kind of perspective. Hey, this is what it's going to look like. And hey, if you're going to keep your kid, if you don't feel safe, then distance learning. If you feel safe, you want your kids to come back. Kind of giving people that this is what it's going to look like going forward. And we're still using that model today, right? Blended distance learning. We were able to project that and apply that. So people know what distance learning is. They all know that what blended is, and so kind of prepare them, for the sake of the future. So one of the things is really, I thought we did a great job on that. I really thought that brochure that we sent out to the families were crystal clear. I mentioned that in the board meeting. It's very simple. If you want your kids to come back, blended. If you don't, distance learning, and I think those are the things that were very helpful. I think what's been helpful here too is even having these letting parents know that, hey, you're gonna get a message from your school about how we're gonna reopen, letting people know that's coming, that definitely they have to look out for. Those are the things I think were very, very positive and very helpful in the way that we communicate and what our plans are, what we're trying to accomplish, and what we're trying to do. Yes.
Super.
I think one thing student-centric comes to mind with this board here. I think we're very focused on what's really in the best interest of students, and we try to gravitate towards reaching a solution that aims for that. So that word is a key word that really, when I think of this board here, my colleagues, that's what comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. Jasmine?
Yeah, I've appreciated the change in tone for our board meetings, of really seeing it as a venue to be able to provide more transparency and more insight into how the leadership is working through different challenges and what are sort of the considerations or the factors that are at play, and just also explaining different processes as well. I think that sometimes board meetings or sort of these public meetings can default to, let's just make decisions and not really provide that, take the time to provide that explanation. And so I think that Dr. Stowe's reports, updates at the beginning of the meetings have been very great, useful for me, and I'm sure for the public as well. And going back to the two-way communication, I know that there have been a lot of task forces that Dr. Crumpy and other like throughout the district that have been convened, as well as new committees. And so providing those spaces where it's not just a survey that, or it's not just, you know, give us feedback, but there's an opportunity and real investment on the part of the district to tease out what people's preferences are, and what sort of innovative solutions that the district may not have thought of, because we haven't had access to the diverse perspectives that are a part of these task forces and committees. I think, you know, these are new, so I would love to see more of how that input is translated into changed practices or policies, and being able to communicate that to the public and to those who are involved. I know that I've been in situations where I've invested a ton of time on some sort of committee, and it feels like I don't know who is actually making decisions. I don't know what the path forward is. And so making sure that the great work that's been done with gathering people together and creating a safe space for people to share, on the other end of that, we need to make sure that it actually translates into their voices being reflected in decisions that are made, and then clearly communicating that back. Sorry, I swayed a little bit. I swerved a little bit from just the strengths, but.
No, that's good. And, you know, I'm hearing words like show that we're listening, empathetic, many different ways to communicate and listen, solution orientation, proactive, future focused, student centric, transparency, taking the time to explain, going deeper than simply a survey, trying to listen here.
I wanted to piggyback off of something that Ms. Park said that I think is important. The communication piece, you know, she was talking about Dr. Stowe giving information. So take, for example, a great piece of communication that a lot of people don't know about. So it was, I believe, the president of the Torrance Teachers Association who had suggested to Dr. Stowe, other districts have a COVID dashboard, you know, why don't we have one? And Dr. Stowe would, that's a great question. Let's look into it. And, you know, very quickly put together a TUSD COVID dashboard. And so there was an example of that listening happening, but once again, that's a secret. And so, you know, pointing out that this relationship between the teachers union and the superintendent now exists that may not have existed in the past, and great benefit came from that. So it's not just that listening was happening, but what's the venue for the recognition that listening occurred and accomplishment occurred because of it. Yeah. So both parties get credit for their participation in that process.
Well said. This is a very innovative conversation here right now. You know, just because we want to make sure we capture as much as we can here, let's pivot quickly to the constructive space of what maybe needs more attention, didn't work as well as it could have. Just for a few moments here, we'd love to hear from you on that. Relative to tough decisions.
Yeah, I think something that I brought up before as well is information asymmetry. So those parents who are, or educators who are very involved and feel like they understand how to get their preferences or their questions across will, but then there are many families, students, and staff who do not feel comfortable doing so. And we only respond to people who reach out to us. And so some people hold more information than others. And I think that can lead to, just in general, there are equity concerns, but there are also power dynamics that can be at play within these stakeholder groups. And so I understand that it's like you don't want to overload people with information, and there are specific questions that you don't need to give an answer to everyone in the school community about, but some of the questions we've been receiving don't fall into that category of just being very specific for a particular student or family or educator, and I wonder what our process can be to, first of all, filter, provide a filter, and then for those questions that we can direct a more general response for, what is the right channel for that, and how do we make sure that everyone has access to that information and not just in a reply to an email or several replies to an email.
Mm-hmm. I think your term of information asymmetry is very appropriate, revealing. And
it's from econ class. I don't remember.
It's a good descriptor.
No, but I think sharing and making sure that you as a board know all of the different things that us and at the district office and also schools through various committees, whether it's Title I parent groups or EL parent groups, that you're informed of those processes that exist. So that I just made a note of that. I mean, that's something that we need to maybe do a better job of letting you know what we're doing, right? And those systems that maybe are in place to reach those groups, that certainly we can always do more and improve. But there are a lot of systems in place already, and so we'll make sure that we can share those with you.
I don't know if this really goes into, so I'm just going to speak a little general because it's not with respect to anything recent, but just in general, tough decisions. I think there are two things that are very important for me, at least. One is understanding the full background, having some context. And second is the impact. When we make tough decisions, fully looking at the impact on different, whether it be people, policy, programs, whatever it might be, finances. What is the impact of that? And I think those are two important things that, without looking at that or without analyzing those two elements, it's tough to make a tough decision.
Mm-hmm. Good feedback. Any other comments about just looking at tough decisions and what might be something more that could work differently?
I think one of the things that when it comes to tough decisions, I think that one of the things that we have to look at or maybe reevaluate are our protocols to these decisions. I think our protocols may send the wrong message. It may send the message of we don't care, we're not listening, or almost to the point we're trying to hide something. I think for a lot of things that came up recently, the impression I get is just because our protocols, the way that they are, it kind of gives the impression that we're hiding something, or it just communicates that, we really don't care, but you just got to wait it out. I think those situations, I think that there's got to be a better way that at least the protocol send a message, hey, we do care, we're looking into it, we're trying to make the best decision, kind of giving that sense of feel. I think the protocols are what they are, and we have to follow the protocols. But I'm wondering if there's a way that we can, do things in a way that it won't muddy the message that we're trying to come across. That's one thing that I've realized just more and more recently, that something about protocol, it just seems like, it just, if I'm on the other side, I get it. I would be very frustrated, and I would be very upset, because I would feel like you're not communicating with me. You're not talking with me. You're not listening to me. And so that's just one of the things. I think some of our protocols to tough decisions, I think that it's harsh. It's hard. The other thing that regarding communication is something that is, again, it goes back to protocol too. How do we communicate to stakeholders, and how do we prioritize which stakeholders are first? I think that before we communicate to everyone, I think that we do need to communicate to those who are probably be the most affected. So Tim, I'll bring this up right now since we just got an email. I think she made a very good point. I think that before we send out an email to all the parents saying, hey, this is what we're gonna do for our reopening for 3 to 5th, I think we should have sent an email to the teachers first. I think that we should have, I'm not sure you did.
I sent the email to all staff at about 1, and then the email went to all parents at 3 o'clock.
Okay, so maybe we could maybe expand that out. It may feel like, if they don't get their email like at 1 o'clock, and then all of a sudden parents are calling them, or they're getting from other places, these teachers are like, things like that. I think that that way we don't get like, I appreciate that. Because I thought we did that too. But again, something like that, just to make sure that, where the stakeholders don't feel like, you skipped over us and you publicize to everyone. I think things like that could send the wrong message as well. Just little things like that.
Are you talking about like Janice Hahn tweeting that schools are reopening Monday night before any word got to school districts like that?
Exactly.
One thing that, and Vice President Hahn, as you were talking, it reminded me, one of the things that I struggled with, and I think I may have even mentioned this at our December or January board meeting, maybe it was January, we're getting a lot of these emails, and it's my tendency to respond and to acknowledge these emails without obviously getting into a discussion, because something could be presented to you. So the struggle in making sure that you don't engage in a conversation that can come before you because it could be a potential Brown Act violation, versus responding to an email to at least acknowledge that I've read your email and thank you for your input, versus here I'm responding to emails, and then I got 4 other colleagues of mine responding to emails, and that one person is getting like maybe potentially 5 or 6 emails back. And so I don't know if in, major decisions or tough decisions, because that's the context in what we're discussing here, if those types of communications needs to be channeled through maybe Tammy Khan or Dr. Stowe or some other, centralized process. I don't know that, but I struggled with that because I want to respond to these emails. I want to let people know that I'm hearing them out. But at the same time, I need to let staff know too. And I don't know if staff is going to send something out as well. And maybe that's okay. But I don't know that. So that's what I struggled with.
You raise a really good point, and for sure. And I believe that topic also will be addressed through that Masters in Governance program. So, but definitely, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ms. Park, but yes, that is something that what I'm happy to respond on behalf of all of you, or I know previous boards, sometimes it was the board president that responded on behalf of the board when you got an email from everyone. So whatever ground rules, so to speak, we want to set up, happy to do whatever.
Yeah, no, and I actually appreciate the fact that we can always run things by you and then you would respond. But I just personally struggle with that. It feels like I'm just passing it on to someone and letting someone else, respond. Like I feel like I should respond, even if it's general, at least an acknowledgement. But that's a personal struggle that I have, and I think it's one of those things that I just need to grow with time and as I move forward in this role. But anyways, just my personal challenges.
And it's a really good reminder that as we think about developing a tough decisions protocol, we are talking about something that is multidimensional. It's not just what is the official message back. It's not just here are the steps we're taking. It's the empathy point, to Dr. Gersten's point at the very beginning here. It's the tone that we have. It's the attitude that we have. It's simple humanistic acknowledgement that we hear you. Usually when you're talking about tough decisions, what happens is you are impacting people and they're having a human response to potential scenarios that can unfold. So I do want to say that you all are talking about something that very few districts have really gone deep and developed a system this is the way we do things here. You are innovating here in Torrance with this conversation. And it's probably a good segue to now talk about, we've been circling words as you've all talked, but what kinds of things might we include in a protocol? Think of it as a one-pager with bullets, or a two-pager that says, here's how we do it here. Here's how we operationalize. What do you think should be included? We're just taking notes right now. This is the first conversation. Thoughts from the board?
Making sure responses are timely. I think silence, when it comes to tough decisions and there are legal or public relation risks at play, that silence seems like a safer option. And so that's the default. And so unless there is some sort of indication of time, and I understand that would be different for different decisions, but that we have some sort of time period or time frame that would, that in which we would provide some sort of response, because yes, silence is not taken well when people know that there is something that is happening and they know that conversations are happening. Silence can breed mistrust and breed just, a bad reputation on our part. So,
and maybe that the whole transparency of here's how we're dealing with this matters. Okay, what else?
Well, that's why, to add to that, I think that there has to be clarity and transparency. I think that there has to be, like, somehow, if we can just kind of lay out what that protocol will look like in advance, So rather than saying, we're investigating the matter, these are the steps that we will be taking in order to look into this, something to that degree, or, before we make this kind of decision, these are the things that we need to consider, or something like that, some kind of clarity and transparency so that they know what we're tracking or what we're thinking. And so rather than just saying we're considering it, or we're looking into it, or thinking about it, that seems so vague. I think that if there's a little bit of clarity, it gives a sense of like a reassurance to the other individual.
Yep. Good.
So when you asked the question, I needed some time to jot some stuff down to get my thoughts. So real quickly with this question, to me, there's 5 steps. There's the introduction to the issue in how you communicate the issue and get it out to everyone that this is the big decision that needs to be made. Then there's that listening component where you're taking in the information. And the third step is what I think Mr. Hahn is talking about, which is that initial response now to the received message from the public going, now we have to tell you we've heard your message, your message has been added to our process and it's included and we will consider what you're saying. But then there's the Brown Act issue, which is it gets a step forward. It's our deliberation, because we can only deliberate in public for us to make our big decision. And then the 5th step is something that I've heard Ms. Park bring up, which is that notification. So now we've deliberated, we've made a decision, but now how do you issue that notification? Again, reassuring we've listened to all, to various viewpoints. And in the end, we've come to this decision, and perhaps that we don't always, we have these public meetings, but there were less than 400 people who watched the meeting this week. And so there's a lot of people who don't know what went into that deliberation. And each of us have spoken our points and made great points, and we've gone, different paths and all come to the same conclusion. And now the notification. So Dr. Stowe handled it in, in a sentence or two when he said 3rd and 4th graders are coming back. But when we make big decisions, there really is also no 5th step where, it's not like we're 5, chief justices making, writing up a 5-page why we did what we did. But that 5th step is to me also possibly important for the community to know that they were heard, and how the decision was made.
That's really interesting, talking about how do we convey the how and the why of the decision, right? Not just the decision. That's fascinating.
I really like the way that you framed that. And one of the questions I was going to ask the board is, are you comfortable with including in this protocol, and you have it as step number 2, that there is going to be some listening, that as we go back and really review decisions that are made, did we take that step of listening before a decision that really impacts people is made? Then people do it. And, you're always going to have the issues of, I don't like your decision. Well, is it you didn't hear me, or is it we heard you, but we had to make a different decision? That may come into play. And then the other element of this is, if there's a process that can work for the 5 of you, imagine if that could be extended to school sites. So when school sites have a tough decision, they're practicing what you're practicing. And we get a more holistic, transparent, inclusive process and tone and closing the loop at the end of those decisions. Other thoughts?
Are you guys saying that maybe it's better if we go back to the checklist? I like, like the 5 steps. We want to make sure we have this, the issue, rule, notice, analysis, conclusion, kind of thing.
I think it can include all, right? It can include what are we about? Why, I believe, what Dr. Muhammad said about, the student focused, and that drives what we do, right? All of us, and crafting some sort of preamble, if you will, right? Of, statement of what is it that guides these decisions? What are our guiding principles? And then, when it comes to difficult decisions, and then kind of these are not necessarily steps, but these are buckets that we make sure that we, fill, if you will. So along the way, and ultimately coming to, and then communicating what that tough decision is. And having lived through all of the budget cuts that we went through in 2009, 10, and 11, those of us in the room that were here in various positions, we all have scars and things that we learned along the way going through all of that, on how things were communicated, right? And we know we're going to come across that again. So, when Bonnie had mentioned, I asked her a few weeks ago, so is there a template or something on this tough decision protocol that we can look at and share with the board? She said, no, districts don't do this. And so, we're creating it, right? And so, to be able to have this, and then how do we communicate that out, right? I think that's going to be really important. And then we hold ourselves accountable to following this process that we agreed to very publicly. And then so no one can come back and say, well, you didn't include me in the process. Well, we did, and this is how. And we've got the history of our practice and what we do in these agreed upon processes. So it's very exciting to hear what you're all talking about, and to make sure that we include this, all of these different elements in there.
Yeah, ditto. I'm thinking back to my days as a school board member and wishing that I'd had the kind of conversations you all are having, so that you could make tough decisions with compassion and empathy and have the intended result that you're hoping for. Dr. Stowe, I'm going to go back to sharing the screen because I think that we want to talk about sort of next steps on this protocol and what you envision doing with it.
Okay, so I mean, certainly welcome it. If you think of something, maybe that, gosh, I wish I would have said that in the meeting, just email it to me and or Bonnie, and we'll make sure we include it as we kind of draft something to then bring back to you in April, probably at the regular board meeting in April. And just for you to look at and provide some guidance. Then I would recommend that we circulate it through our various stakeholder groups and just get their input. Again, I can share it with TTA. I meet with them monthly. We can do it through the Blue Ribbon Advisory Panel. However, and that's something that maybe we can talk about in April of which are those groups that we want to talk to about this, and then maybe bringing it back to the board in June or July for approval, for you to say yes and give it that blessing. Ms. Park?
Yeah, there's just one thing I was thinking of town halls. If there's, when we're talking about listening, if there is an option to do something similar, because I don't think emails are the most effective in communicating that compassion and the fact that we're listening. And so what are other spaces where that can happen?
It's a great idea. Great idea.
And actually, it's kind of ironic. Instead of this paper mail that's way slow, we have things that's a lot faster, which is emails immediately. But nowadays, it doesn't seem like emails fast enough because we don't necessarily look at it every single hour or every single minute. And so on top of emails, if there are things that we can do to disseminate information more, and like I was saying earlier, if there's only more events that we can show up to so people have the chance to come talk to us, that would be great instead of just having emails.
Mrs. Liu, I think that is so fantastic that you're saying that, because it is often overlooked. The human factor of just, I'm going to be present, I'm going to listen, tell me what you think when you're at an event. It's so powerful. And we don't want to lose sight of that either. So we have a procedure, we have a protocol, we have a system. And guess what? It also includes being present, showing up at a house meeting, showing up at a town hall, and just listening. It's very powerful. Well said.
But I think that, just to add to that, this is why I think social media is essential now. I think that more than emails, I think social media has now, dominated our society. And I think that, I still think that our use of social media is not powerful enough to communicate. I think that, because I think social media has a very strong responsive element to it more than email itself. I think people look at their social media accounts a lot more often than they do their email accounts. I think when you get an alert from your email, it's like whatever, but as soon as you get an alert from your social media, whether it be Instagram, whether it be Snapchat, whether it be Facebook, it's almost immediate. And I think people feel like it's maybe their venue where they feel like they can share their thoughts. Because the reason why it's not just individual, it's public, right? At that point, where if you're responding to something, it's going to be public knowledge, whatever. So they feel like they can express their thought or whatever it may be. I feel like it's more personal in a certain sense for people when they do social media itself. And that's why it's such a powerful tool. And I think that there are things that I feel like, people would find more useful, I think, if we decide to post certain things on our Facebook posts. I think those are the things that are most helpful. That's what I've come to realize through my Facebook post is that people, one of the things that we have to make when it comes to tough decisions, whenever we make a decision, it shouldn't be a surprise. It shouldn't be where the people are like, what the heck? How did they come to that conclusion? If they have that kind of reaction, then we did not communicate well, right? If they're like, I didn't see that coming. No, you should have seen it coming because this is how we, been communicating throughout, right? You should have seen, what our feelings are, right? For example, right? I've been posting about reopening. I'm posting about what CDC says about reopening. Bringing, so everyone knows that this guy wants kids to come back. It'd be like if I voted against that, they'd be like, "What the heck?" And I see that coming from a mom. But everyone knows, based upon my post, this guy is leaning a certain way. So that they know, right? So they know that what I'm thinking. They can yell at me, tell me like, I don't agree with this, right? Because they can vent their opinion, because they know what my opinion is, so that when I make my decision, it's that decision itself. So I think that in our communication factor too is that hopefully the things that we put in place kind of communicates kind of like what we're leaning to in that tough decision, right? So tough decisions to me is not that. To me, the biggest thing is the impact. Like I think someone mentioned that earlier, the impact, right? If people disagree, but they understood how we got there, then we're okay. But if they're like surprised because they didn't see it coming, then that is a big failure on our part of miscommunication, right? So for example, this whole reopening with 3rd or 5th grade, it should not have been a surprise. We were one of the first districts to bring back, 1st grade, we brought TK. It should not have been a surprise. I think that if anything, if we didn't open, I think people would have been surprised, and so those are the things I feel like we need to get better. And I think the usage of social media is a better form, I think, in terms of the immediate, like what Mrs. Liu was talking about was the immediate response where, like kind of like we don't live in that email world anymore, but we live in an instant world.
Well, and you're on a growth trajectory as a district with regard to social media. And so the world is definitely moving at warp speed on that front. And the district is moving as well. When we think about where the district was in spring of 2019 and where you are today, there has been significant growth. Does it mean we're done? No. But that track on social media is absolutely what we see. And we do see that up and down the state in school districts now. Everybody's needing to adapt. And if we can marry this growth in the channels and the reach with tough decisions, then we really will have arrived, and do it with a human touch so that people feel heard. And the idea of no surprises is a good one. Okay, I think we need to pivot to the next place, Dr. Stowe.
Yep, I think you're going to go over the listening piece.
Yes, but just a quick point. We wanted to allow for some time today to talk about what we haven't done yet, because we're on a path of continuous improvement in the communication space. So we're going to allow for some time on that. But first, we would like to say thank you from the Clifford Moss podium to the board, because each of you gave us time in the form of telephone interviews to tell us what was on your mind. What were you thinking? What are you thinking? And so we really wanted to make sure that we include in this conversation, in this workshop, some time for you all to talk about your vision, your individual visions for the district, especially in the communication space, and what common threads there might be to build a tapestry that really helps the district go even further faster. I think is the way to do it. So you can see up on the screen here what we heard, and some of that flavor has already come up today. So I think that we should use our time, if you're comfortable with it, Dr. Stowe, talking about various individual visions and how we can make all that come together.
Right, and so we want to hear where you want us to be. I think there's some notes that we all have on what's already been said, but it's about a new conversation and I mean, this is really the start of that, to or continuance, I guess, about what we want our vision for communication to be. I think we're moving in the right direction. You know, really talking about a fundamental shift in how we communicate, creating this this culture of communicators through our 3,500 or so employees, when you include all of our walk-on and part-time folks, really as communication ambassadors to make sure that they send the message and communicate the message about who we are and what we're about. Then we've got thousands of students and parents who can also, you know, continue to communicate about the positive things that are happening in TUSD and how we conduct business. We have, as we mentioned before, you know, really so much of this starts with the individual, and so the investment in the people and the belief in continuous capacity building that we're already underway with the administrator and classified training. I know we do a lot of, you know, pedagogical practice training, technology training with teachers, but maybe we also need to, you know, bring them into this conversation around communication and how they communicate with students and with parents. So certainly that's something that we can look to expand to and infuse into what we're already doing. And just creating this culture where you know, and developing this shared vision, you know, with the board, so that when people hear Torrance Unified, they think of the great reputation that we have and the entire community and how we, you know, support people in coming about, you know, in doing their work. So just want to hear from, again, all of you, maybe on, you know, what is it that you would like to see as we develop further where we're going, and what are some either specific things or broad areas that that you'd like us to think about.
And I'll go back to the screen here from some of the things we heard, not all. That may jog your memories.
Well, I guess while people are thinking, the students, including students, and really it's not just about including students. For me, it's about centering student voices in all of our conversations, which Dr. Mohammed also talked about. And so I know that there are some spaces where students are able to come together with school leaders and teachers to be able to express their thoughts and preferences. But I'd love, I don't know, I was thinking of, I participated in some hackathons and where you are able to really identify pain points and then work together to come up with ways to address whatever those particular pain points that you encounter are with others, and then having an opportunity to then present those sort of more fleshed out ideas to people who have the authority to either invest in your idea or, you know, for people who have decision-making authority. And so I think that's like one idea. I don't know, I don't think it would take the form of a hackathon, but what are ways that we can be more intentional about gathering student input and allowing them to be a part of not just pointing out problems, but coming up with solutions, because they have access to they're experts in their lived student experiences, and we are not. And so I think that unless we draw from their expertise, that we are missing a big part of the perspective that we need to come up with any solution that is going to further their educational outcomes and their well-being. And again, like I mentioned this during our interview as well, but really meeting people where I think there are culturally specific modes of communication. And so there is a lot of value in translating different communications and providing interpretation, but there's also very different messaging that comes across when we go to where people are. So what I had mentioned was if we were to, once we are able to gather in person again, do we have to meet in the school board room? Can we go to spaces where like a mosque, or can we go to the library, or wherever people that we feel have not been intentionally engaged in our school community? Can we as a board go to them and really show that we care about their experiences and want to serve them better? So yeah, those are, I'll stop talking now.
Great. I think that's where we're going, is to hear from you and to see what is the next frontier. So we've all been taking notes. It's good input. Very good input. Let's keep talking. Share your vision. Others?
One thing is that, we talked about whatever it is that we come up with or develop, how that can be, emulated going down to sites, and them kind of using a similar type of model, protocols, whatever it is that we come up with. But at the same time, I think we have an opportunity to also influence going up. And that would be, not only in our, sub-region here, South Bay, but even Southern California and beyond, what we do and how we do things. So we have an opportunity to really shape that as well as within our own district. But that, if we want to do that, I think we can do that.
Absolutely. We know that there are others who are watching Torrance. We know that you've been telling your story at CSBA. Thank you, Board Member Hahn, for being part of that team this last year. And we know that there are other districts who are contacting us, contacting the superintendent, keeping him on the phone, asking for his advice about how do we do it. We see how you did it in Torrance. How do we do it? So that is possible. And as you all know, it takes work, and it takes your vision coming together. More thoughts about what you want to see in the future?
And even somehow, right? Jasmine, you mentioned about the, engaging parents and where they're at. What maybe some other ways to, we've done different town hall things throughout the years that I've been here in gyms and auditoriums. But are there other avenues, other ways that maybe parents we can engage? Because I think the schools struggle with this too, right? They say, wait, we sent out these messages, we had these parent nights, we invited them, we provided childcare at parent nights, and we only had 12 people show up. So it is a challenge. So I'm just don't know if anyone has any other thoughts on how we really authentically engage with folks, not to tell them what we're doing, but to really listen and get their true feedback.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that's why I gravitated towards the task forces or committees. I think that utilizing liaisons, so there are already authentic, networks and channels of communication in place. It's about how we leverage them. So if you know that a lot of Korean parents are communicating with each other about their students' experiences or reopening on Kakao Talk, or if there are other families who are engaged on WeChat, I don't think that TUSD has to create an account for those, but it's, if those conversations are happening, can we activate can we build a relationship with liaisons to provide that information to people who may not otherwise know how to get that information or may not think it's important or relevant to them. But if it comes from a trusted source of a fellow parent who they're friends with, like, they're going to listen more. But Dr. Gerson, I saw that you had unmuted, so I will get.
No, you've said a lot of great things. In fact, I wrote down one of your quotes from a while back: tease out information from diverse perspectives. I'm going to hold on to that quote and a couple others you're making. So you're making good points, which is why I get to sit back and listen. Right, Bonnie? What was I thinking at the time? Because you made some more good points that I was also jotting down. Totally lost track of my thought. I should have written down what I was thinking. No, one of the things that I noticed from both teaching and being a parent, and to get to Dr. Stowe's point about, how do we get more people to come out? I think about the activities. Now that Jefferson is in my trustee area, it makes sense that, that we transition to that middle school, and there was no way that anyone could know. I didn't know how trustee areas would lay out. So it's appropriate that my kids are in two schools that are in different quadrants, but are in this trustee area. And it just, coincidence how that worked out, which is great. But I took some criticism for sending, my first, why would I pick a school that wasn't, first in overall state, student achievement scores? Why wouldn't I pick a school that had the best math scores? Because that's my thing. Why wouldn't I pick a school that had the greatest achievement improvement? What was it about Jefferson that I wanted to send my child to? And as I told to Dr. Stowe, it is the inclusiveness of the environment. The fact that Dia de los Muertos was celebrated, a mariachi band was brought in. There was everyone, the place was full of people celebrating this holiday. When the holiday performance came around, it was 50% Christmas, 50% Hanukkah. It was, again, inclusive. Every aspect of the school culture was inviting. It was, I volunteered as, they had a program for dads, their Watchdogs program, and happy to volunteer. And so, they're not just bringing moms on, they're bringing dads on, and creating this huge inclusive environment. And Dr. Stowe said, well, wouldn't it be great if every parent had that experience at every school? And, that is completely, a vision and a goal that I think we would all share. And so, your conversation about inclusiveness, and also Dr. Stowe's conversation about how do we get more parents, it is that inviting environment. It is that exciting. It is that, these programs that we're doing that make you want to participate in those school activities. So school site council is very important, but how many people want to really go and discuss, spend a couple hours on the budget versus coming to an activity that's celebrating one aspect of the student population with student presentations. Even on Dia de los Muertos, they had their diorama set up. They had different sections set up of student created projects that people could see and participate. So I think that's one of the keys. And what was getting me to think is, because I agree with Mrs. Liu that we are so eager to get out in the public, but everyone's eager to get out. And I think that once COVID is over, these school activities are going to be even more important. And I was discussing with Mrs. Liu some ideas that when COVID is over, these things that we can do that are, more district celebratory as opposed to school celebratory, that would give an opportunity for community members to want to come and participate, to fill a need that we're all going to have when we're finally allowed to all get together and meet again. I was discussing with Mrs. Liu that I don't think the city will be able to produce it, but we absolutely could do it. And and give families the outlet to want to participate. So those were some of the thoughts I was having as everyone was talking.
Super.
So I think for me, one more thing here. I think that, so we talk about how the communication is going to occur amongst people's communities on their own, right? And in the question we have to ask ourselves, what is that trusted resource? So what trusted resources are there right now to get information about Torrance Unified? This is why I set up my Facebook page. I'm a school board member. So whatever I post better be trusted resource. Whatever I'm posting there, you can rely upon, that's pretty much word, right? So outside of that, so let me ask you this. Where in TUSD right now do we have a trusted resource? So let's say some, Koreanized parent, was able to speak English, is kind of proactive, but yet where is she gonna go? Where is she gonna go to get that trusted resource? And I think that's what we have to define. We have to figure out what that's going to be and who that is or where that is, because again, we're talking about these town halls, we're talking about these events, all these things, but that's just a one-time thing, But my thing is when people need information, where can they go? Where can they go, right? And so that's the thing. I just don't know where people go for information. We talk about it being a resource and we want to communicate, and we know these communication and conversations are going on amongst each other, but we always wonder where do they get the information from, right? And so people have to figure out where they're going to get the information because we don't have trusted resources where they can go and get that information, right? And I think that's the key to me. I think one of the things I want to see is that we have that one resource where people can go and get the information that they need, and that's the thing. My thing is even today, when we send out the email to the parents about the reopening, that reopening letter should have been on the website. That reopening letter should have been on our Facebook page, right? Just multiple avenues, it doesn't have to be just that one email. Because, it could be kind of spam, it can go to some random place, you don't know if they got the email itself. But at least when it's on a Facebook page, when it's on our website, when it's on our, whatever, people can go to that, it's there. It doesn't disappear, it's just there, And I think we need to have that centralized location where people feel like I can get trusted information.
So one thing that's really interesting here that you're reminding me of, Mr. Hahn, is a few things. One was the research we conducted. And amazingly, now this was several months ago, but it's got to still have some value, that the number one place where people got information was word of mouth. So that is an interesting thing to just resonate on for a moment. Secondly, we just conducted, when I say we, a collective we, there were a number of people on this Zoom meeting who were there, conducted training, customer service training for frontline employees of your school sites and of the district. And I was amazed at the heroic work that those employees do every day. The more we saw them sharing their experience, they talked about how they are a sort of on-the-spot problem solver for people who come into those school sites. And there was real innovative thinking about how do we make sure that we're giving them the resources they need. So, because some people say, I want to talk to a real person who is not going to hang up the phone, who's not going to put me on hold. And what we really learned was there's a lot of accountability with those frontline employees, because parents will walk in the door and say, I need an answer. And so investing in our people and their training and where are they going to get information becomes really important too. Dr. Stowe, I'm sure you have thoughts about that too.
Well, I mean, one of our pillars is being a trusted resource, right?
Yeah.
So making sure that's incorporated into all of the training in what we do. So looking forward to expanding and tweaking that a little bit, those communication pillars with kind of how do we message some of that, and how do we ensure that we are, and we have all the trusted, that we are that trusted resource that people can go to, and they know, that the information that we have is accurate and it's timely.
The key is that we often will see in a lot of our work is consistency and repetition of message across platforms. So what someone is hearing at the front counter in the school office is the same as what they read on the website, is the same as what they see on the Facebook page, is the same as what they've heard from their friends. And the better we can all get with that, the better we're all going to be. The other piece that has become super powerful in this process is video, whether it's Zoom or whether it's, credit to Tammy, the video on returning to school with COVID. When we saw that, we started showing it to all our other clients. This is the way you should do it because it was very, very vivid. And sometimes video, the visual impressions are as powerful as all the words you could use.
You're right. We do need more video and video from all schools on all school websites. Orange County, I mean, all those schools have videos selling the best points of their schools. They do a much better job of advertising everything great about their schools than we do. And also in your talk, one of the things that you kind of laughed at me when I held up the green and the yellow at the same time initially. But since you touched upon it, the early listening that you did, my green was for the external communications component, because it's so clear. You gave us data. We know where that data came from. We know what the data said. We know what the data means. We know how to move the needle on that data. And so that's why I gave the green, because on external communication, I felt like you gave us a very strong grasp of every aspect of what's been done, how people feel, and what we need to do to move it, and how we're going to measure it to see if we've succeeded.
Good baseline.
Yes. The yellow was for the internal communication, because I still don't have a measurement. I don't, we've done all these things to improve, but I will never be able to measure from where we were to where we want to be. Mm-hmm. And so I still feel a little floundering on that aspect that, Dr. Stowe and I had conversations about the game of telephone that sometimes existed in our old way of communicating internally. And so, for example, as Dr. Stowe said, having a multi-hour Q&A alleviated any game of telephone in one of the most important, parts of this reopening process. So improvement has been made in this space, but I still lack that measurement and that presentation on where we were, how we measured it, where we're going, and how we're going to know that we've succeeded. So that was the yellow on that component.
Let me respond to that, because I think, Torrance has been moving the dial in so many areas that, we have a spoil of riches here, because you all have said yes to let's get to work and let's improve. And I will say that one of the items that we had laid out in the strategic plan, if we can get to it, is some kind of an employee perception survey, which can really speak to track where are employees about this culture of communicators.
And we had talked about doing that last May, but obviously,
got sidetracked with COVID.
Happened. But because that was going to be our baseline, and this employee satisfaction survey, kind of I forget what.
Let me just offer one thing though that blew my mind, and I'm just going to say to all of you, there we were in customer service training, and we were coming back from small group breakouts, And someone came back and said, you know, the big thing to me was I got this personal note from the superintendent saying, thanks for working hard. And I was like, I couldn't believe it was a handwritten note. And then somebody else goes, well, now wait a minute. So imagine being on a Zoom. Somebody else goes, wait a minute, I thought I was the special one who got a personal note from the superintendent. And then all these different people started speaking up about how they thought they were special. But it's creating that contagious enthusiasm for your community and your schools that is going to carry you the furthest. And I believe that there are people, we are moving the dial, even though we didn't get to do that survey yet, Tim, that we are moving the dial because there's a whole bunch of people, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Stowe, who are saying, hey, thanks for asking what I think. Thank you for asking. And here's what I think. When you do that, it changes the flavor of the relationship. And that's what's happening all over the place in Torrance in a way that it didn't before. So I have to stay on that track.
Yeah, I think kind of along those lines. I mean, it's not empirical data, right? But the survey of the needs assessment, or I forget what I shared with the board, but it was some of those, you know, the surveys that we did on that customer service and of the an email that Gil sent out recently to all classified staff asking for their input on the kinds of training that they would like. So I mean, that's one piece to that we can use to show.
That's good, because when it comes to superintendent's evaluation, I am going to have quantitative data to support external, but I'll only have qualitative data for, you know, internal communications improvement. So
I can always make up some numbers.
We'll keep working on it.
I had a question whether we were going to discuss the communication pillars, or is that just going to be through email?
No, I mean,
Tell us now.
yeah, bring it up.
Share some
Well,
thoughts.
I have a few, but I don't want to derail the conversation if people had other thoughts.
please take over.
Okay, yeah, just for a trusted resource, I think including students as a group that would turn to TUSD as a trusted source. I think that'd be a good. My main point was with number 6, teamwork. I'd like to see a phrase or a sentence that also acknowledges the value of individual perspectives and incorporating those, and an acknowledgement that diverse input makes teamwork and the ultimate result better, because the way that sometimes teamwork can be interpreted is, you know, assimilate to the majority, or just sort of fit in with what is the norm, has been in place in tradition, whatever it may be, and that's not what we want, right? And so I think that paragraph, if there's some way to fit in the acknowledgement of teamwork doesn't mean you suppress your individual experiences and background and preferences. It means you express them, but you are coming into this place of wanting to find consensus and wanting to work together towards a shared goal. Yeah, that was my main point, but I don't know what other people thought.
Let me just offer one perspective here, that I love that you honed in on teamwork, because truth be told, we originally had 5. We had 5 pillars. And I think it was Tammy who said, we need a teamwork pillar. And then there were people weighing in on making that teamwork pillar even better. And now you're coming with an even deeper, more full expression of what teamwork means. So there is great power in providing something simple and inspiring that provides a guidepost for this culture of communicators that you're building. And I think at a minimum, these were intended to be really a living document, a living framework, So we should always be willing to tweak and improve.
And I love that.
Three of you gave it a yellow, so I'm interested, Mr. Hahn, in your thoughts there.
On which one? For the
The
pillars? No, and I like what Ms. Park said. And it's kind of funny because, when I listen to Ms. Park, I feel like I'm talking to an alien because of the fact that she's younger than us. She is a millennial. And I'm very sincere about that. I think because you bring a unique perspective. I think you got to understand, we're all think alike here. We're all Gen Xers, a lot of us here. We're all the older. And when you talk about that, it's very interesting about teamwork. Back in the day, it's kind of funny because when you talk about leadership, there is rank leadership and there's role leadership, right? And, as Gen Xers, we're so used to the rank leadership where it's top down, where, whatever superintendent says we do, don't ask questions, you just listen to what I say, you got to get it done. And you got to figure out how to get it done. But millennials are not like that. The younger generation are all about role leadership. They want to be a part of the team. They want to know what their role is, and they want to fulfill that role. And so a great illustration like this is like back in the day, like for sports, right? So back in the day, it was Michael Jordan and Kobe, right? Basically one guy and everyone, you just give me the ball, right? That's your teamwork, right? Your teamwork was to give me the ball and I will win the championship for you, right? So that's kind of the mindset that we had. But nowadays, the kids here today, like the Star Wars, right? You have the protagonist beating the antagonist, right? It's one guy. Everyone else is just there to support that one guy. But look at all the movies today. And the things of today is different because we have Avengers. Who is the main guy? It's not one guy. It's everyone playing a certain role. Everyone's kind of fulfilling their place and coming collectively as a team, fulfilling their role. Rather than having someone tell them what their role is, they just know what their gift is and they're just contributing to that gift. And I think I like what she's saying about this whole idea of teamwork and communication is that we have to understand that individualism where, like she said, it's not where someone told them or they're just kind of going to the majority, but they have that freedom to express their ideas where they can really feel like they're being heard and they feel like they're a part of the team. No matter how big that gift is or how small that gift is, everyone has a unique gift and a contribution that they can make that can really change things, and I realize that more and more, like, when because, obviously, I go to conferences and we're talking about these generational cultural differences. And obviously when I hear Ms. Park speaking, I feel like, oh my gosh, she represents the new day, and, these are very helpful and insightful. And I'm thinking, I got no clue how to start this, because it's not the way I operate, and I think that's where it's very, very helpful. And I think we have to start thinking like that too. And, with this whole cultural expression and individual expression, what does that mean? 'Cause before it'd be like, who cares about that cultural individual expression? But I think that we need to hear and understand and try to implement it. So those are the, yeah. And so
It's very healthy. Very healthy.
I also like to point out that I'm a different generation than our students right now, so I'm also not represented. I feel like they also have different modes and cultures around communication. So, yes.
Great.
Others around vision. This is the beginning of a conversation, clearly.
All right. This is what they say call wait time. One of my last conversations with the members of the TTA executive board, they asked, and I forget how we got on the topic. We were talking about two-way systems of listening at the school sites and decisions being made and they said, so I sent them the pillars and I said, take a look at this. And one of the questions that one of them asked was, did you tell the principals to share these at school sites? Because this would be very helpful to be able to have them share at a staff meeting. Like if that's what we're all about in the communication space, we need to communicate it more broadly. And so I hadn't even thought of that. I mean, we did the training with our admin, we're doing it now. We shared it with the classified as, in the customer service training and zeroed in on that, but we didn't really You know, it wasn't something that we told principals, go back and work with your staffs on this and make sure they're aware of these things. So so that I think is a step that we'll take, whether it's later this spring or maybe something tied in with the work we do over the summer, is to make sure if these are things that we buy into, that we're all about in that communication space, let's communicate it more broadly than just our leadership team and those that go through some training. Let's make it a practice and that people can point to, and we can all embrace.
That makes a lot of sense.
Um,
Dr.
learning organization, that I see that's italicized. Is there a reason for that?
Oh, I
On the pillars slide.
don't know. Was there a reason for that?
I
Oh
think
no, I think that's probably just a formatting thing. No,
actually there was at one point there was that people might say, oh, you're a learning organization because you teach school, you teach in the classroom. But the true full understanding of learning organization is everybody's a teacher and everyone is a learner. And no matter what job we have, no matter what role we have, we can learn and should see ourselves as learners. And the chief learner is Dr. Stowe. He's the chief learner who's setting the example for everyone. And so when he talks about learning organization, it is a deep, deep understanding of what that is.
That's what I was thinking too with learning organizations, that we will be proudly stating that we will be one forever. Otherwise, you just complacent. Oh, we're all good. I mean, we are really pretty good here in Torrance, but we can be better. And that's a line that actually Crumpy says all the time that I hear. It's like, we can do better. We can do better. And it says a lot about us. We are constantly learning, constantly listening to the new perspectives, different opinions. So I really like that. I want people to know we are constantly learning, not because we suck, pardon me, but because we care about what you say, you know, from Gen Z to Gen X to, is there a Gen Y in between? Because Gen Y. Actually, I never think of you, other than before I met you, as being a different generation than I am. But in any case, that's what I think as the learning organization. And I really like that you put it there. I almost felt like maybe that's a number one thing. Is that why it's italicized? But formatting, okay. We pretty much have the same definition for what a learning organization is.
good point.
Yes. So Dr. Stowe, it's just.
Yeah, I mean that kind of wraps up you know where we're at. I sent you the PowerPoint slides, so and also posted them on the on our website under board docs, so that anyone who's interested can view them. But really, you know, I thank you for the time, and there's a lot to process here. You know, cabinet, we all kind of heard different things. I'm sure we'll continue the conversation, and work with Bonnie and Laura, bring back something as it relates to a tough decision protocol, a draft of something that we can share with you. And this has been tremendous. So thank you for your time. Bonnie, do you have anything else, or
Yes,
Laura?
just to say what a privilege it is to be able to work with this board at this time, with the commitment that you have, the creativity that you're bringing to this discussion. Everywhere we go now, we talk about Torrance. If they could all just be like Torrance, oh well. But thank you for your thoughts, because we are going to keep informing and enriching what has been started. Thank you for your input.
Yeah, I third that. I second and third that. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to hear all of this fantastic wisdom coming together in a public space to continue calibrating for the future. So thank you.
All right.
feel the
So,
same way too. Thank you all for coming. We feel very privileged. You know, we're very happy that we have Bonnie and Laura here, and especially Tim, our chief superintendent or chief in charge or whatever. And of course, the rest of your cabinet being here too, withstanding us. But it's all good. Thank you.
so that unless you have anything else,
USD.
you can adjourn the meeting, I guess. And
Yes, I will. I can entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So move. Second.
All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so
Night.
much.
Hey, guys.
Hi, everyone.
Thank-
And it is Iron Man.
Avengers, Captain America.
I need to watch more movies.
Spider-Man for the next generation.